ሁሉ መተህ ነው እንቀበል።
I have no other choice. That's how it's gonna go. You know, I missed the opening and the annual feast, so
Yes, it's okay. It's
yeah.
whenever God's will, it happens. Diakon Naho was there last time he came.
Now,
Yeah, on the regular
now
Sunday.
moves like the angels, unseen, unheard, but appears.
Yeah, he just appeared in the church. That's what happened.
Yeah.
We're so
It was a
happy to
beautiful
see.
time, honestly. I have so much, man. Like, if we could make an entire episode about that, I would love that because there's so many things I noticed, Cassis, that you did. Particularly, one thing we're gonna mention a little later was the prayer of absolution, of how you incorporated how I noticed it in the Coptic Church, how they like into ልብሳቸውን የሚባርኩት መንገድ, and then also incorporating that into the deacons, because a lot of times as deacons we're just running around like this, and a lot of people, people that are observant, let's say the mothers, they look for the crack in the maqdas and they see a bunch of people running around. They're like ዝም ብለው ነው የሚሯሯጡት። ግን that what you did really mitigates that, because ሁሉም ሰው comes together, right, and then they need to do their prayers attentively, and that was so powerful, honestly, because not only do they know that like ልብሳቸው መባረክ አለበት, like their service, not the clothes itself, but that their service has to be like allowed by the priest, and by extension the bishop, and then the patriarch, like that seamless transition. And so that, and also that aspect of being attentive to the prayer and not just doing it haphazardly, because again, so we need a moment. So that action really solidified. That's one of many, honestly. But
we're trying to incorporate that.
We come back with another episode with our beloved father Kesis Abaineh from በአማርኛው ሰዋስወ ብርሃን፣ በእንግሊዝኛው it's the spot. The spot to be at. I'm sure
the ladder of light, Satan. People are saying the ladder of light.
Of course, the ladder of light. But
it truly is, because I really resonate with it. It feels like home. So I grew up in Lakwanda, so a lot of people will not know exactly what that is. So people think, it's like a butcher shop and all these things, but there's a lot of butcher shops. But there is one important aspect of that area is Soaswa Bran Kadus Paulos College. That's where all, like, most of the scholars that I know went, including Abuna Fanuel, that was that is present and who basically implemented or established the wonderful church that we have there. And also it's just, the likes of Magabi Addis Ishat, all these people, watching them go through this college. So I've always had this love and affection for, like, Soa Sobran. Anything that comes along with that name, I'm like, that's home, and that's the way I see it. And I'm very happy that was the case, as far as how to establish it goes.
My favorite Kesis Yantasem. Personally, I love it. I mean, maybe I might cause other people to be puffed up, but then personally, I just love the fact that you're. Who named you? Who gave you your name, Kesis? Was it your dad?
Abaineh? I think so. Yeah, it's my grandfather, actually.
Your grandfather, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I noticed there are certain, Ethiopians, their name makes sense, like, next to each other. Like, for example, like, obviously your name, Abaineh Manya Helhad. And no one really thinks, people just kind of shorten it. I don't know if people call you Kesis A or Father A, but,
Abaineh. Kesis Abaineh.
Actually, for a lot of people, my first name is Kesis. That's how they like. People are asking, your first name is not Kesis? No. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so Abaineh, I just loved it because Abaineh, obviously you're the Nile, right? Which is, funny in and of itself. But then Manya Helahan, like, it's like a sentence in and of itself. And so again, it's my nerd nature. I like when words come together in unison and make sense.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I didn't like my name for a while, like for a long time, especially when I was young, because you know, you know how they aligned you by alphabetical order. So always I'm the first one in all of my classes until 12th grade, because it starts with
Oh.
A and then the next letter is B. So there's no one
Uh-huh.
who's gonna be in front of me. So
Yeah.
it was the hardest time because every time I would be the first to, answer questions or start a speech or something because I'm the beginning. So, but
Where did you go for
yeah,
school? Where did you go for school?
I went back home in Ethiopia. I finished college there. I mean, well, I didn't finish, but I started college there. That's where I came back
Yeah,
here.
because that was another thing I wanted to highlight because you spent, a considerable amount of your young years in Ethiopia, and then now
Yes.
every Sunday, and you have to. It's like 100% English, and people assume, people look at you on the videos and they assume, oh, okay, is he told or like he was born and raised here, but no,
No, no, no, no,
no, it's a
no.
big shift for you because you served in the at Dar es Salaam Mariam as well, but then like majority of your life as a young person, you served Bamaring, and then so now it's like a complete shift. How
Yeah,
do you like it?
I received my deaconhood back home in Ethiopia in Kesis Selassie College actually.
Really?
Yeah, under Abuna Timotheos, I think he passed away now.
Mm-hmm.
And I served for a few times in Dar es Salaam Qudus Stephanos Church. That was my home church, Mescalah Dababa in Ethiopia. So yeah, my deaconhood is from Ethiopia. I learned most of the beginning knowledges of the deaconhood and the traditional scholar teachings back home in Ethiopia, and then I came back here when I was 18 years old. Yep.
Huge
Oh wow.
transition there. One, if I may ask, this is also a question that I get asked most of the time as well. As far as like deaconship goes, ordinance in Ethiopia and ordinance here are completely different things. So, you came here when you were 18, so you've seen, the ropes, the difficulties and what you need to go through in order to become an actual servant. A lot of people, there's so many people who attempt to be in service and deacons, but are not able to because of the standards that the church has.
Mm.
When it comes here, it's completely different. And the perspective that I have as well is that have we loosened that standard of the church, and has that harmed the service within the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as far as ordinance goes? What do you think, Seb, as a person who went through that?
I think you brought up a very good question, George. And I mentioned that if there is an opportunity to discuss about this as well, because uh, personally, there is trade-offs in my opinion. Back home, there is more strictness in the idea of relying on faith that I saw, uh, that I wished that everyone has here, especially like, for example, not only ordination, there is a ceremony by itself called, learning about the mysteries or Mystir Mayet, right? So back home in Ethiopia, like it's a very big deal. It's not just because you're ordained, you're not just, you do everything. There's
Yeah.
certain steps that you have to take after ordination. Um, I think I would say it's kind of a similar thing in other sister churches that you have to go to like a seminary and stay there or things like that. But for us, like there's called samonia, right? Like you have to stay and then learn and, kind of a probation time.
Hmm.
Uh, and in that time, and when you see the mysteries, the way that they make you to truly invest in the faith and to rely truly like building, your faith in your service. I think I feel a little bit we lost that here than Ethiopia because they're very serious back home on that idea, and which I am more fortunate to practice that before I come here. And of course, we try to implement that in our church as well. The before they start serving, even to the point of how the succession of steps, like how they have to obey the priests or the bishop, the connection and things like that. We had to really give time for them to understand that. and to some extent, it really is paying off. But for other aspects that I see around in America or outside is I think it's because of the scarcity of servants, in my opinion, but it's just a rushed service, right? Like you're ordained, there's no one, so just get your dress and go in and serve or do this, hold this, and everything, right? To some extent, I've seen that. I wouldn't say all, but uh, that I think that part of it, I think we missed it. Uh, but other than that, what I would say, and if I may, I already mentioned this to Diakon Nahum as well, is um, there is other aspects of that we lost back in Ethiopia, and even here more is um, making the deacons to truly invest in evangelism work, in scholarly teachings of theology, or uh, focused on like personal progression of spiritual life. Especially if I may mention this, right, very recently there's kind of a trend that we see, right? Like a lot of people are inclined to I wouldn't say the full aspect of it, but the surface level of the traditional teachings, especially the melodies, the chantings, the warav, and all of those things, and focusing only on that because that's for the youth. That's the time of that's where they can shine, right? You could wear all the temtem and then wear the kaba and the mekwame, so everything is invested in their mind on that. And it's very unfortunate to see, even in our celebration, we've seen that in multiple places. The youth deacons, they participate in the chanting, the morning or the midnight prayer, and as soon as the divine liturgy starts, what do? They disappear. They go, they disappear. They go and hide in some place and sleep and everything. And it's really unfortunate to see that. And I feel like um, it's becoming a trend. To some extent, I had that experience when I was young. Thankfully, like I had a wake up call from other fathers that told me that, which is very important, is the divine liturgy and the participating of the sacraments, right?
Yeah.
So I think we are missing that out in the process of ordination, not learning of what is important and how to truly invest in the sacramental life, which especially gives us like the spiritual progression. And I think in that case we missed it even back home, and then I've seen it more right now in the trend in this country as well.
That's actually
Absolutely.
so. What you said, Casis, I think to kind of draw it back, bring it full circle. Diakon, is a good. It's a good word, obviously, but then it's originally a Greek word, which
Greek
means
word, yep,
servant, right?
yep.
Or more aptly, I think for modern terms, it's a waiter. Like that was the
Mm-hmm.
purpose. Like when we go to the Book of Acts, the reason why the apostles ordained deacons was for waiters, like literal a
Mm-hmm.
glorified waiter. ማለት ቲፕ ምናምን የለም ቲፑ እንትን ነው በረከት ነው and the blessings, but then besides that, it's just you're just a waiter. And so when people even like አሁን በእንትን ላይ በ in the general public, people think, oh, እሱ ዲያቆን እኮ ነው, and then just people think of it like like a really glorified
Yeah, they
title.
put you on a pedestal.
Exactly. Like
You're
even me,
yeah.
and then I'm like, and after I learned the meaning of the word, I just think, oh, like what and then egale na የሚሉት like no way
Mm.
no, like making it like a how others are like doctor, lawyer, and then diakon, and then like waiter, just bringing that all the way up there. But they don't realize that that's really just what it means. It's not to put down the rank, because it's not what it used to be. Obviously, that we don't just give out food for people anymore. But then at the same time, there's this like balance between it is a higher calling, right? It is, as you mentioned, Casis, it is a calling of you have to. This is one thing I noticed too, like in your story that you mentioned. Oh my goodness, hit me in the face! Like imagine telling people on Sunday, pray, like pray for peace, pray for this, for that, but you don't actually pray. You know, like however much it is, you don't actually pray, and that's such a shift, obviously, from apostolic times, obviously, in
Hmm.
which we participate in the liturgical service. You know, we give out the holy blood of Christ in the chalice, and then participate in the entire cycle, and that grew, obviously. But then at the same time, it's that core principle is you are truly a servant. You are called to be this, you know, in this position
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely.
you to partake in like you for higher things, you know, like
Yeah.
كأنه
One
أنت
thing,
like that for higher things, you know, and
one
it's not.
thing, just sorry to cut you, that helped us, especially in our service, is maybe in the future, of course, when you guys have this chance to implement it. So in St. Paul, what we do is once a month, every beginning of the month, like there's a refreshment section like Shaida, Bo, and everything, right? So in our church, once a month, always the deacons are the ones who's gonna give that to the people. So they're
Wow.
assigned to go to the refreshment room as soon as they would assign they will be assigned. They put on their vestments, they go, and they are the ones who's pouring the chai, pouring the coffee for all the congregants.
Mhm.
Try to instill in their minds like you are this is, as you mentioned, Diakono, this is where you're called to serve the people, right? So I think that kind of putting us a little bit down into this service, the lower, in quote unquote, the lower service that we think of. I think it brings into perspective of why are we called. So
Mhm.
yeah, I absolutely agree.
If I want to add, this is very important too, because with what you said, Diakon Gogoros, about like the standard that was set in Ethiopia, right? Like this is like actions, like you're doing things, and then people are going to be like, "Oh, you're saying your work save you," or this. What you must realize is the faith of Christ is incarnational. You have to work, like, and then not just work, the type of work, the context in which you do the work, and all these things affect and imprint on your spiritual life. So for example, ሁሌ የምትቀድስ ከሆነ like ማይኩ ጨምርልኝ, just, and then like if you're in that type of mindset, that's going to imprint on your soul, and that's going to imprint on how you view the world, how you view the priest, how you view you see what I mean. But then, as what you mentioned, the initiative that you have at the church every like once a month, and then having them rotate, it's imprinting in them, okay, this is something like, if I want to be the highest, let's say, even if I feel some sort of ego, I have to be the lowest. I have to be the lowest, and that's the pattern
Yeah,
that Christ has shown us. It's always,
absolutely.
I call it the spring effect. It's like the more you put down a spring, it's the same way. You have to follow that pattern, and
Yeah.
it's definitely. Let me ask you this, Casis. How do you mitigate? Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it's sometimes like the because of, yes, yeah, the lack of servants, right, or the lack of
Mhm.
deacons, or certain churches they just kind of ordain, as Deacon Gorgoros mentioned. You notice that in deacons that grew up in a lack in that manner end up showing, what's being imprinted in them, which is like this show of pride, and they don't even notice it. They don't even notice that it's in them. So the question is, if you come across these type of, or if other people, that may be listening, come across this type of spirit, let's say, right, a way of conducting themselves in a prideful, presumptuous, expecting, oh, this is me, mine, that type of mindset. How would you mitigate that from a pastoral perspective? Honanta, if you see that in your kids, right? How would you call it out, without actually calling it out? Because if you try to direct it directly, it ends up being, it backfires automatically,
Yeah.
because the person
Yeah.
is not seeing that you're trying to help them, right?
Hmm.
They're,
Hmm.
they don't even know that they're sick. Sijama. So, how would you mitigate that aspect of pride?
Um, I think for in my experience and in our church experience is um and I truly like I love these deacons, even like any church that are we ordain them, they're so innocent. because most of them are very young. As we are in that age, we wanted to be shown by like the Satакano and everything. It's nice and everything, but truly in their heart, they're very innocent, right? What I believe is everything of the personalities or the conducts or whatever that they have is what they perceived from around them, and I believe that. Again, not calling anybody out or anything, because it's all of us are in the same boat, right? But these kids, they will project of what they learned. And for us, like, because you mentioned about the mitigation, what we can do is, every time what I try to do is I want to show them, especially service wise, I want to show them with an example, being an example, right? So I've never asked anyone to vacuum unless I vacuum the church. I've never asked anyone to roll the mats and do anything unless I am willing to put my sleeves up and invest in that. And that's what they see every time, right? Like, I invest in things, I invest in people's life intentionally. They learn, they see that I doing vacuum, carrying the water, the sabel and everything, that sometimes because of how we're accustomed that, oh, those are not my job. When they see you truly invest in those things and like lowering yourself, they say, oh. And then you would also have, I would say, the mouth or the ability to say that you should do these things, right? But if you already sit yourself on a pedestal and like, put it, showing them, pointing fingers and saying, do this, and as you mentioned, now it's going to backfire. But when they see you partake in the communion every Sunday, they will partake communion every Sunday. When they see you, live in the sacramental life confession, or even your shortcomings to some extent, right? Like, showing them that you're as human like them, you're struggling, but also showing them the way in a sense. And I think that very much helped us in all of our services. So anyone that we're assign things or correct things, uh, through God's grace, I've never experienced someone like, oh, why is he saying that? Because they know that, and whatever that I asked of them, I asked of the same thing of me, doing those things. So I think that is the true remedy and solution that I've seen, and it's helping us and working out for us.
Very much so. It's everything. I tend to think with what you said, Cassis. It's so humility. It's the it's not putting, again, I'm sure people have heard it a million times already. It's not putting yourself down. It's thinking of yourself less, and then thinking more of what's my goal and what's my responsibility, and taking on that as part of my responsibility to
Yeah.
love of God, right? Like, I have to follow these rules, but also love of neighbor, meaning I have to follow these rules for God, for my relationship with God, but also for my relationship with people, because the rules are not contrary. It's not, the love of God does not ever go against the love of neighbor. So it definitely kind of goes hand in hand. And also what you said about following hierarchy. Another one thing people don't know, and I think they should know, is St. Paul, it's fully English, right? But it's not fully English. The Zema is still in Giz. And some people, again, when they start this evangelizing, they start from a position of okay, let me just do this because we don't have any people, and I have to do this and I have to do that. And if you may allow me, Cassis, I have to be let me divulge a certain story. Let's say, so you had the process of starting to serve in St. Paul fully in English. By fully in English, I mean the Zema as well in English. But even though you started that process, you completed that process, and then you went over to the fathers back in Ethiopia, right? Our heads, our bishops, and then you started that process. And then when that process didn't fully go through according to your plan, right? What did you do, Cassis? and I'm gonna say it because you ended up obediently following what your father said, and that's it. And people don't know
Absolutely.
this. Arla, this is very, very important for all the things that Spot has done. Arla, have you read your Bible? Or have you did in the videos, the shorts, the reels, and then like the thumbnails and everything? By the way, which whoever makes your thumbnails, I want to connect with them. They're really good. They're really, really good. For all the things that you have done, it's so empowering that you, as you said earlier, you have to show them by doing it. You have obediently accepted, even though the whole model of Spot of St. Paul's Church, the Orthodox Church, is fully English. You have obediently accepted the guidance of your overseer, of your bishop, as though it's the word of Christ, and then just continued serving without any over complaining, without any, you just accepted it, right? And then this
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
very important to highlight upon, because when we evangelize, there is that mindset of, even though we want to do all these things, it has to be under, to a certain extent, like and by a certain extent, like how do we discern that? That's a different conversation. But then we have to be following the guide of the bishop. As we mentioned in another episode with Diakon Mehret, the bishop is Jesus Christ, as St. Ignatius says. So if we don't follow the bishop, then we're just in delusion. So that's completely contrary a way of evangelizing, and it's just we're doing what we want, not what God wants, ultimately. And yeah, but
Yeah,
it's very, very
yeah,
important. I
you're
do
right.
want to shift gears a little bit, starting with the bishops and then the Zema aspect, towards Mazmur. So, man, don't we love Mazmur? How do studios, right?
We've been talking about this for the last 6 episodes.
Yeah, and how? So again, not a lot of people know this, and I think they should. So I'm going to divulge this again. Kesis Abaineh, you have authored certain mazmurs for some parishes, right? For the use of Masalakat Tahay Awanatakal Hamanut in Virginia, right? And then also various others that were used in various situations. Primarily also in YTC, now Spot, St. Paul Orthodox Church, for the utility of the services after liturgical services. And so I guess the question is, how did you start authoring mazmurs, right? And then also like a point A, like question 1 and point A, why did you primarily use Yaredawi hymns?
That's a very loaded question. But but before we answer that, I also, because you mentioned that one now, I really wanted to give props and congratulate Adu Studios, the Congorgorios, Adam, and everyone that's doing working on the Adu Studios. Like, you guys are, how someone is trying their best and having someone next to him to to help out in this English ministry. You guys did an amazing job. Yesterday, actually, I was listening while I was running of one of the Adu Studio songs. So you guys are doing great, and I really hope that you continue, especially like the one that the new Ahadu Studio songs. Like I really love that. Resemble them. That's my favorite song. I always listen to that. So like try to I encourage you guys as well to author more songs. It's really is needed for our generation, because our forefathers say that, right? A person who sings is like praying twice, right? There's a saying like that. So um, even I think from a young age, I'm really interested and inclined to Zema hymns and things like that. But when I was young, like not that I have a good voice now, but I couldn't even sing at all when I was very young. Like uh, when I was growing in that puberty time and everything, it was very hard. So um, when I started going to there's a campus ministry. in the church, in the organization Mahabara Kandusan back home in Ethiopia, and it really that's where I actually started, serving in the church. But I was a Mazmur Kafil, or the choir group at that time, even though I didn't have any voice, right? But I think I've seen, like, right now when I trace back of all the steps of my life, I see like God's invisible hands in every one of it. Because when I started that, I didn't have any knowledge or anything about Mazmur. Then one of the what is it called? One of the summers, we are asked to go to one of the monasteries back home. It's called Ba'ata Monastery in Addis Ababa, so that we could learn like Sudase Mariam and everything. But actually, the goal was just for us to promote it, not to learn, because no one was expected us to like really divulge in it and to learn. But I continued that for two summers, and I finished that. And I started even with Dasi Mariam Zema, like the chanting of Dasi Mariam and everything. I started back home before I became a deacon, and then that's where I actually started like really enjoying melodies, chants, especially the songs of Saint Yared. And then at that time, there was a lot of like the Protestant songs, gospel songs coming into the, intertwining with the Orthodox believers, and people does not have any way to you know point out and separate different songs if they're Protestant or not. And I remember what my teacher back home, he was a very very talented teacher of Qadasi, Sa'atat, and everything. But also he used to call us, a couple of us, separately, and he used to teach us about like how we need to really adhere by the melodies of Saint Yared, right? Even for songs and everything, and that truly resonated with my heart. And when I eventually come to this country, that become my my sole goal, especially song or mezmur wise, and yeah, before saying, yeah, Misratas I Santa Climate church song, we've done a couple of songs for Debre Salam Kristumarim as well, with one of my friend at that time. He's actually a priest now in Kidanamrat, Kesis Mesfin. And we started kind of practicing it at that time, of like creating words. But as I said, since I've learned back home from my teacher in the Abaineh school, or the traditional school, that chanting or the melody cannot be created in a sense, like, even though like the Merigitas or the teachers, the scholars, they create these things, they create of what they've been learning since they grew up, right? It doesn't come from anything. It's not that as if it's coming from like worldly music, because they're not invested in that. So even if they construct something, it's whatever that they've been learning since they were young. So we knew that. But in addition to that, what I truly believe, even up until now, is we are called to utter different praises, prayers, or anything like that, while adhering or using of Saint Yared's notes or chantings. And this is an example, or like we have a prime example of doing this. This Abba Georgis Zagastra is a prime example for this, right? Think about it. Saint Yared is the one, the author of all the melodies, the chants, and the notes and everything. But Saint Georgis Zagastra, when he authored Sa'atat and everything, what he has done is he incorporated the melodies to his prayer. And all of the prayers, that the Sa'atat and everything, even though it's not, the melody is not him, but the prayer is him, we sing of Saint Yared's melody. And for our forefathers, even after that, when they create a praise for even Saint Yared, or for other recent saints, they adhere and use of the melodies and the chanting of Saint Yared. So I think we have very good role models and examples from way before us, of how we can incorporate these things into the chanting. So what we try to do, even especially coming to the YOTC, now St. Paul CDs, is try to incorporate every of the chantings to relate back to rhythmically and melody-wise of Saint Yared. And I think one prime example is the "Glory Be to You" song that we translated. It's directly translated from the 9th hour service of the Siklet or the crucifixion chant, and we just translated it and then incorporate the chanting the same way. So I think in that way, what we can do, what I truly believe, is we make people to truly, get in contact of, the Saint Yared's melodies, and eventually to love of Mahalet, or for the love of the Qadasi and everything. That is the way to go, in my opinion. That other than just, coming up of, from the worldly perspective, or um, connecting to the worldly chanting, or songs, whatever the case. So that is how, like, the history, how it come about into the YOTC and all the other songs, and hopefully in the future as well, finding a way to truly adhere, even to the point of, like, trying to come up with the notes of the church, of Saint Yared's notes, and then chanting of changing the language, which is only changing it into English so that people could understand. But because of that, I'm really I love Saint Yared's chantings and the melodies.
Yeah, so I think, man, there's just a bunch of stuff that I wanted to take a thread and then discuss, especially when it comes to the authoring of Mazmurs. But then I think I'm gonna stick with this one anecdote, small anecdote. I was talking to my dad about, Ethiopia, just, because it's during his generation. Like, we were just talking about this too with Dewan Gogoros, that Mazmur became a thing. Mazmur as in how it's colloquially known, not Mazmur Kedus Yared, like every Sunday. Those are two different things. Mazmur, how we understand it now. He said some of the Marigitoch, right? Like, whether or not this is ethical, you can speak to the Marigitoch, but some Marigitoch, right? They would come together with some of the older singers, like Talahun Gassasa, or singers like, like really, really old ones, right? And I don't know some of the names. There's this one lady too, I forgot her name. And now they would come together, and then they would use, some of the, like, hymns, like the Maharit hymns, and they would, like, almost embed it. They would embed it into the Zafan, right? And it's to say that okay, people might say, okay, Zafan is bad. Why did the Marikis do that and everything? But then it is really a commentary on the fact that not only does the Saint Yared affect and imprint upon our way of life, our way of praising God, but it has also affected, imprinted, and also, like, our parents, in the Qarar Tami Bal Nagara, like, just something like you listen to for the sake of it soothes your soul, right? And there's songs that are like that, and those songs, right? And if I can find them, we'll definitely talk about them next episode. Those songs, the reason why they're so soothing in us is because these Marigetoch, they work together with these Zafanyuch, right? These singers, these hymnists from the church, melodists from the church, work together with the singers to come up with these melodies for their own songs. However they say it, however they put it, ethically, however you want to put it, that's to discern for you, the listener. But then there's wisdom there.
But also, like, all of the, the singers, the worldly known singers at that time, not now, but at that time, if you trace back of their early ages, most of them are deacons. Most of them went to, traditional scholarship, educational places, and everything, and they learned zemas and everything. And that was one of the things that, like, I remember, like, people that we like, oh, this is a very famous, singer, Zafan or everything. And I hear, oh, he used to be a deacon when he was young, right? So you're right. There is always, even for the women's, most of they are probably, like, in the choir and things like that, right? So there is a residue of Saint Yared in every way.
Exactly. And I think definitely like trying to go back to that is very wise, because if we start, if it starts branching out too much, it ends up feeling it ends up being, let's say, it separates the people from the general services. Because one thing I noticed, Cassis, for example, is Qaddasi, I guess to be a devil's advocate for the diaconate. Qaddasi and Satat is very, let's say, not upbeat. There's no rhythm, let's say, right? It's not, there's no jumping, there's no, movement and everything. So people make that excuse saying, okay, I can't, I don't want to come here. The deacons and then like the other let's say church parishioners would make the excuse like, okay, like Qadasi is very slow, Satas is very slow, but then Mazmur, like that's great, like I can come into that. So having Yareda Zemas in the Mazmurs, and then having people like being well acquainted with that, would lead them back into the liturgical services, whether it's Mahalit or most importantly Qadasi, because if they don't hear that same rhythm, the experience I was going to talk to you guys about was I went to Greek Orthodox Church in Dallas, Holy Trinity Mibalalina. You'd be surprised. First of all, Qadasi starts at 9. Unheard of. We would, if Sfat did that, it would be horrible, I think, for a lot of people. Would be like, oh my goodness, tahaddusu honu, and then, it just ends up being bad. They start at 9, Greek Orthodox Church. And then, mind you, 9, no one is there. At 9 is still like Markasir. Like from 9 to 10 is still Markasir. So the equivalent with us marathon. So they have morning matins prayers. And then from 10 to 12 is Qadasi. I cannot tell you. Like at 11:30 is when 95% of the congregants came. Okay? Just mind you. At 11:30. And then even when they came, they have a choir up there, marathon. Like, so there's the pews, and then there's if you've ever been to Boli Malayalam people, there's like a step higher where people stand like higher. So that's where the choir members were. So the choir members were like inya equivalent, like like or Marigitoch. They were up there with the mics singing, responding marathon. So like the deacon says Tansula Tzolot, they say the people say nothing. The people just stand there. And they don't do anything, and then they like Korban Simat Anam, like everyone in Korban, at least the Korban, at least they did had the communion. But the really saddening thing that I noticed is the fact that because they were not incorporated into the melodic hymns, these people didn't know how to sing it. Like a majority of them did not know how to sing it. It was just the choirs that were doing it for them, right? And so that's why they came late. They came late because no one was doing it for them. Like they were doing it for them, and they never learned it. All right, so I see that foreshadowing in Nyagaram. Maybe just not conspiracy theory, but then maybe. So definitely incorporating and entering into the melodic tunes of and rhythmic aspect of Qadus Yarid really brings you into the life of the church, right? And then definitely really, really helps. I believe so, personally.
Yeah.
Actually, I was gonna be the devil's advocate and ask maybe a similar topic theme, but yet a little bit different question. As that, we always have this intriguing and difficult question to answer for everyone. To this day, I haven't gotten a straight answer for it, and I've never given, because of that, I've never given a straight answer to anyone. So, like, what is Yari Dawizema? That is the most difficult question to answer. And the reason why it's so difficult for me to comprehend any answer that I've gotten is that a lot of time, the most common answer we get is that, but still needed a creation or a contribution of your own creativity in that zema, so that it can be a fruitful one. That's the way it is. also when we look at Zema in general in Ethiopia, whether be it in Mezmur, whether be it in church, whether be it in music, these melodies, hymns come from Yared, right? Whether it is Tizata, Anchuhoye, Ambasel, Bati, all these things are creation of Yared. That's why the music school in Ethiopia is called, Saint Yared Music School, because every melody comes from that aspect. So, hopefully, I was hoping to find any, something that I may have missed somewhere. So, what do we say to people who ask this question, right? If Saint Yared is the composer of melodies, what then should we say for people who ask? Also, these musics come, from his composition. So how do we discern that? Even in Mahalit, when Margitas create the warab,
Mm-hmm.
it is a creation. Like it comes, like it's a sort of revelation, inspiration by the Holy Spirit. Those warabs that we have, 100% of them are not from Saint Yared. Saint Yared
Mm-hmm.
didn't say, don't be like, these are
Mm-hmm.
this is the warab for this Mahali. No, most of the time we find new zemas, right? A new type of warab, and we always see it and we're like, wow, we are inspired, and you
Mm-hmm.
feel the Holy Spirit within those warabs, and we glorify God. So how do we discern what is inspired by the Holy Spirit through the revelation of Saint Yared and what is not of him?
That's a very, very good question, Dagongogorese, and I think um, it should have been answered, um, in my opinion, even long time ago by the archdiocese and decide, okay, this is the limitations of Saint Yared. You're not going out from here and from here, and this is the limitations. I think because as you mentioned, like most of the even the Mahalit parts, a lot of those parts, if they are not in Dugwa, they're not Saint Yared's, right? And even when you come to Dugwa, like it begs a question that does Saint Yared only, chanted without instruments, or he chanted with instruments, right? That begs the question as well. So there's a lot of things that goes in there, and since it's really long time in history, tracking back into that point and restricting and like definitively saying that this is Saint Yared, I think that's the hardest thing to do. And people can speculate, people can tell you some of their opinions, but I don't think you would have a definitive answer, in my opinion. But at least my take on it, how it helped me in constructing the songs is I always go back to the first, because right now we're talking about just the songs in the choir and things like that, right? So I'll go in the first who came and make of all these songs in our church is Margita Brahan Wuddina. Margita Brahan Wuddina is the pioneer that to be honest, for me, it's an unsung hero of Mazmurs in the church. Even during the times of Haile Selassie, in that time, he used to go to the radio and sing of the church chantings, right? Now, I was fortunate enough to receive two of his cassette songs of that time, long time ago, and I lost it, and I always
Yeah,
like I'm
that's a
grateful
crime.
for that. I
That
know,
is a
I
crime.
know, I know, but it was so amazing, to be honest. Like for me, like, and then when I hear to the song, right? Like as soon as I hear to the song, I can directly say, okay, this song is coming from this. If he derived it from this and this and this and this.
Hmm.
All of the songs, all of the songs. But at the same time, it's a really nice way of incorporating of his own saying and then the wording and things like that, right? So starting from him, and the other person I've seen exactly to the majority part of even imitating Margita Branuddina and some of his ways is Nika Mazamran Ilma. Nika
Yeah.
Mazamran Ilma, he's done most of that in the same way, and I really admire him for doing that as well.
AKA
So I think
your father-in-law, your future father-in-law.
is
I
it
wasn't ready, man.
is there
If
a lot to
anyone is
announce it
wondering,
in this way?
anyone is wondering.
Now just giving it out.
I know, right? What are you doing, man?
Let them be surprised.
But yeah, and he did an amazing job of doing this this way.
Yeah,
So for me, the way I see it is, as you mentioned to some extent in the beginning, that if there is a way to truly track back to um, the Mahalit Warab or the Angargari or Spelalim kind of chantings, I would say, yeah, that's Saint Gary. So that's for me, that's the first sign of tracking down of what is closer to Yaridawi or Saint Yarid's melody. The second one for me that I truly give hit to is rhythmic way of singing. And a lot of songs fall short of this because they don't adhere to the rhythmic melody chanting of Saint Yarid. Now, if you, of course, you guys know about these things, but when you participate in like the chanting of the Warab or even Mahalit, like the Akwam, parts, there are the specific ways of the letters are falling. You can't drag more than 3 letters into one way, or there is only 2 letters that's gonna, if those 2 letters, you know this through Kenya as well, because
yeah,
if it has saddest letter or anything, it would be compiled, and then two letters can fall into one side,
yeah,
right? So there are these things. So the in the same way, when you do the warab, right? In one side would fall 1 letter or 2 letters if there is saddest, or 3 letters if there is saddest, and then the other way would be on this side. And then the way Saint Yarid and even on the Mahalit chanting is very much rhythmical. It's not melodic instrumental, right? Like you can't play just kabaro, the drum, and say like, this is this song. You can't say that.
yeah,
You can't use anazal and say like, oh, if I when I do anazal, oh, he's playing this song. You can't say that.
yeah,
Same thing as anazal, kabaro, and mekwame, because those are rhythmic guidance for us, not melodic guidance,
yeah,
right? But like Masanko and Krar, those are melody based, right? So Saint Yarid's chanting, most of it is rhythmic based, right? Based on the kabaro hit, it falls here, and then you can drag the aheta or the shouting until some part, and when the kabaro hits, you stop there, and then you start another layer, right? So in that way, all the Saint Yarid melody based songs have to be rhythmically um, measured and rhythmically constructed in a way that it falls on, when you do like the Shib Shabbat, it falls on this way or on this way or on this way, right?
yeah,
It shouldn't be dragged into the worldly side. And you know these things by practicing most of the songs and learning and worshiping in a sense. So
yeah,
those are the things for me, like really good indicators of, okay, even though I don't know this melody are like really derived from Saint Yared, but I know rhythmically it aligns with Saint Yared's chanting of the Mahalit, the Warab, and things like that. So um, those are the ways I would differentiate. But again, going back to your question, the Ngurguris, you can't like very strictly say like this is the point of, okay, these are the Saint Yared's, these are not. But the indications or some things that points you out are these things, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. It's very difficult. Like you said, maybe the Zaymalik is what
Exactly.
really determines what is appropriate as far as Saint Yared, the structural hymnology goes. So it makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think Ahon, with what you said, Dekon Gogoris, just something I'm learning from the Easterners, let's say, is the fact that, and we talked about this too with Dekon Mehret. There's aspects of the faith that aren't like rationally, I think with part of the reason why we struggle and try to figure out, okay, what is this? is because we are in a culture of we're in a culture that epitomizes rational thinking, right? And ahon, for example, like with what Asi said, when you say wazi makani or like a itana mogar sidarres, there is the general zema exhibits like that's like the basic zema, right? But then if you were to add a few words in here or a few words there, the zema lick would change, or the way in which
Yeah.
you would say it changed. But it's still a pattern. There's a general pattern. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what we have to like really focus on as Orthodox Christians. One thing I noticed that a lot of people aren't focused on because of the like globalization and then like internet having all this information. So now we're trying to rationally understand. And I was that guy, always asking these questions. But then I finally realized when I came across this one thinker in the Eastern Church is we have to think in terms of patterns, right? We have to think as Orthodox Christians, like it's a mindset. It's never, and then for it to inform your mindset, there are ways of, for example, Sitta Nasa, what's something people already assume that you have to do. All of us, when we got on this call, a few things we had to do, like, and this is gonna sound stupid and foolish, and for me to point it out, but this is important for us to understand this whole Zema, and then which is in Milan Matan. So, what's first thing? We brushed our teeth, we washed our face. Hopefully we prayed, and then put on our clothes. We got on the camera. We adjusted the camera. So this is a pattern. This is a pattern. We know we have to sit here, and then Kasis, today you had to go to work, and then they're going to go as well. Me too, and so these things they're not isolated events. They're a pattern. Like we are going through a pattern. And then in that same way, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is going through a pattern. Every Orthodox church that you go to is going through a pattern. And so in that same way, Edusiarid instantiated that pattern through divine revelation, of course. Whether or not he used instruments, that's a debate. It's probably going to end, like it's going to last until the end of time. But you can start saying, okay, what's going on? So, we have to be there because we have to, partake of the Eucharist. And then Mahalit, we have to praise beforehand. And then the Mahalit, the climax gets to Qadasi, and then Qadasi literally, for example, Hosana Bitkomu, like for Hosanna Baal, there's Qadasi stuff in the Hosana Mahalit. Like Hosana wa Araya, like Zik, one of the Ziks is from the Qadasi. You know what I mean? So like different Zema, but then you see it, if that makes sense. And so all this sounds mumbo jumbo, and it sounds like I'm not really explaining anything. I'm just saying a bunch of stuff, but really, it's like explaining how do you pick up a girl. It's just a pattern. Like it's really just a life. It's a way of being. It's a way of existing, and we can't apprehend that and try to explain it. The only reason the fathers are able to explain it is because they have a lot of data points, as he said. You have to go into it, learn it, and then you're able to explain, as he explained the technicalities, and as you understand it. The reason why you can explain it, the movements, the rhythms, and everything is because you have data points in your head. You did it for 2 years, 3 years. And then as he says, well, you've learned for a considerable amount of time. Zema, not just general Zema, but also Mahalit, movements. Where does the tzanatzal end? How often should the kabbalah be hit? In what way? In what movement? How often should you know what I mean? All these things, the movement between maragd and tzanatzal. As I say all these things, they're technical terms. For our general viewers, you probably shouldn't really know this. If you want to, go ahead. But then, a lot of fathers, they conflate and think, okay, and they say, okay, learn this and this and this and this. No, just go into the life. You go into the life of what's already existing, and then you experience it, and then you see, okay, indazino. Not the other way around where you're trying to say, okay, how can I figure it out? No, go into it, and then it takes a while, a long time, by the way, like at least 2 years, 3 years of going into it, where you start to be like, okay, whoa, okay, this is this, and this is this. If you're very attentive about it, and then after that, it starts to kind of like settle into you, because if you try to make it into an archaeological way of thinking for people who ask that question of what is yada, what isn't, you're missing the point of what's being done. Ultimately, is what I learned personally from the other churches. Anyways,
Yeah.
Katay,
At the end of the day, you just gotta have a spiritual riz.
yeah,
Yes.
that's the
To
one.
understand,
That's the
in
one.
order for you to make a hymnology, you gotta have that riz.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
one probably final thing I would say on this topic is, as you mentioned, Diakon Naud, um, so when they learn, especially our forefathers, like when they learn the melodies, the chantings, the canon, all of those things, they didn't learn only the knowledge, and that's very important in our generation. They learn of the way of living, because if you truly like examine of one very renowned teacher and his student, a pupil, like whose followers student, what they learn is not only the knowledge. They learn how the teacher talks, the way of his talking, the way how he walks, the way how he prays, the way how he interacts. That's why they say there's a saying, right? መምህሩን አህሎ መምህሩን መስሎ ይባላል. Like there's some of those kind of saying. What it means is
Ahelo
like
meaning like to his standard. Is that
at
what it
his
means? Ahelo?
level, and then
Yeah.
resembling him, like true, like. And I've seen that even in my days, like a student that actually walks like the teacher, like the way that they walk, even in on the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I fear moving forward that we miss that aspect of learning from the teachers, right? Because, for example, like in the DMV area, we have this great teacher, Ligat Abab Yeheyes. He's scholar. He's very knowledgeable, but at the same time, he's a spiritual person. His life of prayer, his life of spiritual presence by itself, interacting with others and everything. It's very remarkable. Like you see the remnants of older people that we talk about in our church. But how many of us will learn that from him? Or are we just learning or recording? That's the problem with Ukon. Sometimes recording, we just learn the Zema part, we just learn the on part, but we don't learn the life of from them, right? If there is a quarrel, like argument, how is he responding those, right? If someone insults him, or how is he responding? So all these things is something that I fear in the future we may lose. So when you mentioned about learning is not only learning the knowledge, but the way of life of learning the teacher's way of life is very essential, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We actually came full circle if you think about it, because
Resemble,
huh?
Good point. You brought it up.
No, I'm just plugging in my own promotions.
No, but we really came full circle though, because what did we start earlier on that aspect of obedience to someone that's higher than you as the bishop? That's what the disciples did. They had their own disciples, the apostles. They had their own disciples. They had to live how they lived because they learned how to live from Christ, and then so on and so forth and so forth and so forth down to us. And that's of the utmost importance, because it deeply impacts how you view the world, how you present yourself in front of the world. And like, what's so sad is the fact that it's not apparent to us. It's not apparent to us because the generation before us, they don't even know to teach it to us technically, because they were young as well, like us. So they were takatono yadagut. They were beats in almost quote unquote what King Solomon says in Proverbs. They were beaten to submission by their fathers because their fathers loved them, right? But then they don't know that we should have probably been beaten into submission to learn about this. Don't cancel me, YouTube. But really though, that's really how they learned it. They were disciplined and then they disciplined by their fathers when likwatasilu anta below, like, you know, we don't want it, or I don't know if they did kabato back then, but you know, whatever their method of
Wow.
punishment, of not sparing the rod, right? And it's because they love you, because they want the love of Christ to pervade through the generations, right? And very, very important, again, like, because it's, as you said, Kasi said, it's definitely a way of life. And so I think of it like on the way of life Sananagaro. It's the service of like the diaconate, but then just as service in general, coming together with this, like, you know, rhythmic type of life. So these two coming together approximates what the church life is like. So one thing I want to ask, I want to go back to St. Paul, especially my experience. Okay, one thing I experienced beyond the prayer, Casis, is the amount of 13 to 20-year-olds that have done Qurban just blew my mind. How many of the youth partook of the Eucharist, of communion, it just blew my mind. I don't even, man, like, it just
We've
threw
never
me off.
seen it.
I've never seen that. Let
What is
alone,
this?
mind you, I came in the Kamasaraki. Like, I just came on a random Sunday. I just came, and then I thought it was going to be a regular Sunday, you know, just maybe like 10 people doing Qurban. You know, that's usually what we're understanding. Unless it's a big church, it's just, you know, a few people taking Qurban. It was a bal, my man. It was a whole, like, celebration, like the lines, just 3 lines, 4 lines. Again, I'm not complaining, but man, it was so beautiful to see. Such a joy to see, because you see the engagement of the people in the service, right? The people that are serving, the diaconats, all of them, if most of them, if not all of them, have partaken. And then the other servants, the Zammari and Bitil, like the choir members or the other members, they have come, they have partaken of Christ, right? And you see that engagement of the Mazmur aspect, and then also the serving aspect of Mazmur. So it's not divorced from each other, and it comes into unison. So I guess I want to ask Asis, is it as I saw it that random Sunday, the engagement of the congregation? Like, what's your experience with the engagement of the congregation, especially with the Qadasi?
Yeah, actually, maybe I would say to a little bit extent, maybe lesser, because it's always like that, or even more, especially when it's a celebration day. It's even more. I think it's it's I the people, the servants, the deacons. It's the way that we direct them, right? Like, through God's grace in the future, Diakon Gorgorios, Diakon Nahum, you, through God's will, you become priests, or, you know, leaders of the church, right? So it's the way that you guys direct the congregation and the servants, that they will go, right? And the things that you take heed and show them what is important, they take that part to be important, right? And yeah, for example, as you mentioned about St. Paul earlier, the Ongorgoris as well, that you're very in favor of, like, the name and the Soaswebran and everything. So when we choose the name, like, we have to sit down and really think about what commemoration for the church should be. And we thought of St. Paul because of multiple reasons. It's not only one reason. And one of the reasons for our conversation is that um, traditionally in our church, St. Paul and St. Peter has only one celebration, right? That's only on Homily, that's it. And we loved that, because sometimes, you know, multiple celebrations is good, but at the same time, your focus is going to be performance-based celebration, right? So if your focus is that, people are going to focus on that. If your focus is on that and celebrating and then go doing all of those things, yeah, that would be the highlight of your service. So what we're trying to do is, like, to focus on participating in the sacraments For example, like to be a member of the church, like there is no payment or you don't have to pay anything at all, but you have to take classes. You have to take 6 weeks of class. And those 6 weeks, what we truly like to raise, imprint in the people's heart is the core values of the church. One of it is the life of communal worship and the participation of the sacraments, right? So that's the first thing, and then we will provide them of different days of participating in the life of confession, to confess their, to do the sacrament of confession and everything. And every Sunday we will focus on administering the sacrament of communion and following through people of partaking of the communion. If someone is missing out of partaking for like 2 weeks, 2 months or 3 months, following up with them, right? Like what happened. And we track the people that are the people that confesses, the people that especially confesses, well, the confessors. There are my confessors, Kesis Abaineh confessors, and we have like in our software, there's a track of people who are doing confession and who are not, right? So that helps us to track down and to focus on them and help them in any way that we can. And for the youth, like, these things that not the teachings of the church, but the cultural folklores, I would say. Yeah, so we need to be able to separate of the actual teachings of the church to honor the partaking of the communion and the cultural folklore of what people just say about communion, right? Easy example, people say like, oh, you shouldn't partake communion unless you're married, or you partake in communion means you become a monk already. That's it. You don't have a life. You can't date, or you can't, look for your significant other. And one of my favorite
ودي
actually is
فلا
this. Like,
يعني
one of my favorites,
القرب منه مالتنا.
one of my favorites. People who come to me and told me that if you partake communion, there are like 6, 7 demons that would follow you. So you gotta be.
Yes.
I'm telling you. So
This one is a new one.
and so that they're saying that's why you have to stay at the house. You can't go out because yeah. Anyways, so there are a lot of things like this that are
Source. What's the
really.
source? The source I trust me, bro.
Trust me, bro. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, just continue.
Yeah, no, yeah, this is one of the things I'm actually really passionate about. And people, because of that, they fear of
Yeah.
coming and partaking of communion. But we highly invest all our servants, even the different priests and me, to clarify this for the people.
Yeah.
Because every Sunday, if I'm preparing communion, it's not only for me and for a few people, for the people. And it's like Christ, letting and bringing out all his food and his feast, a waiting feast for people, and people always saying that, no, I'm not going to participate in this. And we clarify that for the most part, and that's why people are like, most of them have a clear mind of what communion is. And it's every time it's almost like an hour in our church to give communion. So yeah.
I tend to think of it, what you said, the having Christ having a banquet, and then we say, I don't want it. That's the beginning of the Qaddas. It actually says, like, if you're not going to take Qurban, just leave. Like, if you're not going to take Qurban, just leave. It's okay. Like, just don't come. But then I see it as the equivalent of, and I have done this before. Like, I'm a very horrible person sometimes in the past. When people invite me to get food, and I'm like, bakay. And then we're hanging out, and that's I'm just doing nothing. Which honestly, it's a really bad habit. Like, even with gursha, like if anda so la gursa simata, you don't say no. You just you partake, you come together, and then
it's especially if that person is the Lord, right? That's
exactly. And so it's honestly, like, if you're gonna come, like, might as well eat. And there's no reason not to eat, because it's for you. It's really just he's inviting you for you, and if you don't want to, then don't even come. You know, I mean, I don't mean it in a mean way, but then it's just kind of awkward when you sit with people, and then the person that you call to hang out, you call to eat with, says, "I don't want to eat." It sounds a little disrespectful, a little disrespectful by Honim. Like, it's just odd. It's like, why are we sitting?
People
eating together?
want to get healed in their own way and come to church to get a medicine. Like that doesn't even make sense. Like, if you're not sick, why are you coming to a hospital, right? People that are sick is what needs of a physician. That's what Christ said, right? So partaking communion is, having Christ within you to heal you, to give you the healing. So that's for the sick people. That is for the sick people. So I think we all have this obligation to really mention that for everyone. But yeah, that's what you saw, Declan. No, I'm sorry.
Also coming hungry as well. Like, if you know you're going to a wedding, you're not going to go to a buffet right before the wedding. You know there's going to be a meal, so you prepare yourself, right?
Yeah.
You eat in the morning, you embrace it, right? There's going to be a feast. I'm going to a feast, so I'm not going to eat. When I get to the feast, I'm going to eat. Our mindset is we're unprepared. We fill ourselves with earthly things, so now we cannot accept. We're not hungry for the spiritual one. It's impossible. All right, so coming in hungry is also. I think where we make the mistake is that where we haven't done a great job as far as our church goes is that we haven't shown our brothers and sisters the importance of being hungry spiritually. Those who hunger are righteous, is what Christ said in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5. So it's not about it's not just about coming in and doing Qadasi and singing and leaving. Even though that fulfills a certain aspect of our spiritual life, it doesn't fulfill righteousness in it complete. That's why King David says, taste how good the Lord is. Like, we're not eating the Lord physically, but we are partaking from his communion. This was a great foreshadow for the Holy Communion. Come taste how wonderful the Lord is. And then that can only happen. We can only taste the Lord if we come hungry. And that means we have prepared ourselves. So preacher Nagoroch, Sawaki Nagoroch, I have to plug it in.
It was very important what you said as well, because that's also why we fast. If you think about it, that's also why we fast. Whether it's 18 hours or 9 hours, I'm gonna leave that to the likaunts. The Catholic Church says 9, and I got 18, 12, 13. I'm just like, I don't know. I give my hand. Yeah. So fun fact, by the way. I don't know if this is a fun fact, but I met this one Indian Orthodox person at a hotel once a few months ago, and he was like, "Oh, I'm on my way. It's a 6 a.m." He said, "I'm on my way to Qurbana." That's what they call their Qadasi, their liturgy. And then this guy has a coffee. An Indian Orthodox, mind you, we're sister churches. He has a coffee in his hand on his way to church. I'm just like, oh my goodness, One noggin, what you said, it's very important though. It's very important that you come in, right? It's you're hungry for Christ spiritually, but then also physically, because it keeps you sober, and then you're receiving, as Kesis mentioned, it's not tzabel, tzabel is great. It's wonderful, like for most of our parents to remove, mental illnesses according to them. So it's great for that, right? But then this is Christ himself coming into you to heal you. He's not sending, St. Michael, go down and then fix Nahum's problems. He's coming into you. He himself is coming into you. That's very important to remember. Like the priest himself says right before Qurban, like I believe and I confess until my last dying breath that this is he himself, Emmanuel, God with us, Christ.
Yeah.
And that's no joke again. So anyways,
also maybe we can put this in the future episode as well. This is one thing that I really want to conversate with you guys as well, also with the Diakon Nahum. We can save it for a future episode. How the Orthodox Faith should view transubstantiation. Yeah, I see a lot of some Orthodox churches denying transubstantiation, but the Catholic Church accepting it. And then for us, we view Holy Communion a little bit different because, even before communion, he said, "You go," so completely transfigures into the actual body and blood of Jesus Christ. But there are some Oriental churches that deny these things. I think this teaching also would give our youth, our people, the importance and the significance of Holy Communion. It could be a topic for another time, but us understanding, when we say come in and everybody has to take it, it doesn't necessarily mean we're not neglecting the heaviness of Holy Communion, just as Saint Paul puts it in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. It's simply addressing the fact that everyone needs to be participant. Everyone needs this healing. We are all broken inside, and we are in need of Christ abiding us together, binding us together, that broken self that we have within. And that's just all that it is. But it's an important topic I really wanted to conversate, but unfortunately we're running out of time.
Yeah, definitely. In the future, that I would love to talk about that.
Kesis, one final question I want to ask you before you leave.
Sure.
Did you ever think 20 years ago you would be not only a priest at an English church, but also the head of the, as a priest of an English church, serving these people? Did you think?
I think I told you about this right now because what is a lack of better term saying that I don't want my brothers and my fathers say it in a different way, but I hated becoming a priest. I hated it. And I used to say like over my dead body that I'm going to become a priest. I've never imagined myself becoming a priest. Yeah, and not even like a church leader or whatever, just as a priest, right? Because I thought like the deaconhood by itself is really huge burden, and I wasn't a faithful servant as a deacon, and I didn't do a good job of honoring my Lord in as a deacon. So how can I become a priest to to do these things? So that was in my mindset. I've never imagined becoming a priest. But again, it's God's calling, but it's the same way since I have never imagined it. So He knows where He's going to take us. But yeah, to answer your question, never. Never.
Man, God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're very glad.
And
we're very
you
honored
used to probably find me like calling out priests or saying like, "Oh, this priests, look at them, what they used to do." Like, how never be, God say, "No, you're gonna become a priest." So
Accepting that God's will. That's that obedience that we were speaking about earlier. That obedience to God, and amazing.
Well, very glad to have you, Kesis, here. We're very honored. Thank you for giving us so much of your time.
I helped out in a very little way that I can. But you guys, what you're doing in this podcast is really, really amazing. You're bringing up like a lot of scholars. Yeah, that give us a lot of knowledge. So please continue doing that. I'm personally learning a lot from you guys too.
Absolutely, and also we'll put the information from St. Paul in the description for everyone that wants to visit, because you guys have been on a roll, by the way, baptizing. Oof, man.
Yes. Can we get a little insight into that aspect of, because that is what Christianity is all about for me. It's just, showing the light to those, who have been, unsighted by the world. So how is that like, as you said?
Actually, another one is coming in September. We're going to baptize 8 another people in September. Yeah,
man,
it's amazing. It's actually some of them we didn't even labor. That's the thing. What we can do is if we could facilitate and show what orthodoxy really is, people would flock and come. I've seen that personally. Most of them we didn't even go and fetch them. They come, so we can't warranty say like it's our work. So yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing is actually as we mentioned earlier about the deacons. I don't know if you guys saw last before the celebration we had a deacons retreat
Yeah.
for 3 days, and one of the assignments that were given to them was we assigned them to go to a mall that is closer to our church, and they used to have like the flyer and everything and evangelize people. And we assigned them, okay, you guys have to go there by any means, by any way, like bring people, right? So they had to sit down and come up with their own methods, and they say like, okay, let's buy water. And it was very hot, so they bought a water, a lot of water, and they went in the mall by giving water for people like for free. And they said like, hey, why don't you come? We have celebration here in the church. And actually, on the celebration day, I think 1 or 2 people came from that initiation. So I think we ought, all of us in the future, should do these things, because people doesn't know even Ethiopian Orthodoxy exists, especially our brothers, African Americans and others, because as they have a wrong impression of Christianity in general, right? So telling them that Orthodoxy or Christianity is for all, and we have a church here, and people would come. So in that way, people came. Was like 7 or 8 people last time, and another one is coming, 7 or 8 people. So it's one of my favorite incidents in our service.
Amazing. Glory to God.
Yeah, amen. Yeah.
Thank you for being with us, Kesis.
No problem, guys. Thank you
so much.
Great to see you.
From the DMV, definitely. No, if anyone's watching from the DMV area, please. I think I memorized the address, by the way. I think it's 2210 Callaway.
Yes.
Temple Hills, Maryland. Yeah, we had a funny story with an Uber driver, but anyways, let's leave it there. But very glad, very honored to have you guys here. Very glad.
I hope to see George Double very soon.
That is my goal. I don't know, it's that statement that Paul made. I wanted to be with you, but same thing is with holding.
Satan delayed me.
So yeah, I have to one of these days. I'm hoping really, really soon.
Yeah,
I might pop up randomly like Nahum. I'm taking
Before your brother came and visited us. You know that, right?
I know he was bragging about it. He called me a few times, and
Anthony was here.
Spiritually, I was haunted.
All right, guys. Great talking to you guys. No problem. Should we close the prayer, or are we're good?
Yeah.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Heavenly Father God, we're grateful for allowing us to start this conversation and giving us the opportunity to discuss, learn, and making us worthy to finish this meeting as well. We ask and pray that bless everyone who's gathered here and give us your grace of forgiveness. Whatever that we discussed, let it be resonate in our hearts so that we can bear fruit and a service that is glorifying you, Lord. And for that, we thankfully call upon your name, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, rescue us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. By the salutation of Saint Angel Gabriel, O my Lady Mary, so that you are virgin and without a virgin embodied, the Mother of God, the Lord of all salutations to you. Blessed are you among men, blessed is the fruit of your womb. Rejoice, who is joyful of love, grace, God is with you. Beseech and pray for our mercy to beloved Son Jesus Christ, that he may forgive us of our sins. Amen. Glory be the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Let your sin be absolved and forgiven. Xavier Iftan.
Amen.
All right, guys. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful